You're listening to Nostalgia Club, the podcast where we look back on our favorite childhood stories and revisit them as adults. At least one of us hasn't read or watched these series, so we also get a first-timer's opinion. Spoiler alert, we will be discussing storylines and future events beyond the first books and episodes, so proceed with caution.
Hello and welcome back to the show. My name's Victoria and I'm joined by...
You go first.
Jino.
Michael.
My name's Jino. Oh, no.
Off to a great start. How was everyone's week?
What? Are we doing? Do we have a small talk segment now? We've never done small talk before.
Well, Jino, about an hour ago, was sticking his hand in a can of ravioli.
I was.
And
For
then
we're
eating
alive. Descendants.
Coming to you soon. I don't know when this is coming out.
Yeah, actually the episode might already be out.
There is a scene where a character squishes his whole hand into a can of ravioli, and I had to do it live for Casey Wayland. This is not relevant. What we're doing.
And about, 30 minutes ago, I read all of Droon book number 3.
Nice. Today we are talking about The Secrets of Droon.
Ooh.
It's a children's book series by Tony Abbott. It is 30 regular books, and then there's at least 5 special editions.
But it's okay because each book is about the width of a cup holder. Or what?
Cup holder?
You know those things you put on the table that protect the table from cups?
You mean
a coaster?
A coaster. They're the width of a coaster.
The text is large. It's intended for 7 to 8-year-olds, and we read the first 3 books. So the first one is The Hidden Stairs and the Magic Carpet. And then we read Journey to the Volcano Palace, and lastly, The Mysterious Island.
Ooh.
I read these books as a kid, but I forgot about them until I was just perusing the internet for Nostalgia Club ideas, and I happened to see the cover of the first book, which is, in my mind, very iconic for some reason.
Describe it for us.
So on the cover of the book, it has the 4 main characters. There's Eric Hinkle, who's basically Harry Potter.
He's got the glasses.
He literally has short brownish hair and glasses, and round glasses, just like Harry Potter does.
And he looks right out of the 90s with his very straightforward t-shirt and jeans.
Yeah, the book came out in 1999. And then we have his best friends Neil and Julie. And then we have Princess Kia, who is the Princess of Droon, or a kingdom in Droon. Droon is a vast and complicated fantasy world.
Full of different environments.
Yes.
One for each book.
And on the cover of the book, they're riding on a flying carpet, and there's some rainbow stairs in the background, floating in the sky.
Wow, like the title.
Wow, hidden stairs and the magic carpet.
Woo!
Galaxy brain.
You get what you pay for.
I think somehow my grandma had some of these books in her house. I'm not sure why, because it wasn't that I got them and then brought them to her house. They were just there. So presumably maybe someone gave them to her and they just stayed in her house, and then I found them and read them. I know I read the first book for sure, but I have no idea which books I read after that, because I read the second and third book for this, and I don't remember them at all. But I remember vague hints of things that happened later on in the series. Inside the book, there are some really fun illustrations, and those I remember very distinctly also, particularly the one of Max, the spider.
Spider troll.
The spider troll. He's a spider, and he has a face, and Jino loves him. He's his favorite character.
I'm making a face right now. We'll talk about Max.
Okay.
We'll get to him.
The general premise of The Secrets of Droon is one day Eric is hanging out with his best friends Neil and Julie, or at least he wants to, until his mom says, "Wait, you forgot that you need to clean the basement." And so Eric is like, fine. He goes down to clean the basement. But his friends are like, why should we clean the basement? We got lots of time. Why don't we play a game first before we start cleaning the basement? So they start kicking around a soccer ball, and the soccer ball gets kicked into a closet. And through a series of clumsy events, they end up closing the closet door. And when the closet door is closed and they're inside, a magical staircase emerges through the darkness. And it's the rainbow staircase that is on the cover of this book. And they go down, because why wouldn't you as a kid? And they find themselves in the world of Droon.
Ooh.
And it's pretty Droon.
Oh no.
That's right. We had a whole thing. It's been weeks, but we were describing stuff as Droon around the office.
Yeah, Michael and I were saying that we should coin a new slang term where we'll just be like, oh, how was your week? It was pretty Droon. What does that mean? Up to you.
It feels like a kind of like low key, pretty good. Like it's not a universal good, but like, you know what? Yeah, it's pretty Droon.
Yeah.
Maybe the meaning of the word Droon changes from person to person based on their experiences reading the books of Droon. Because for me, when I think of Droon, I think of something else. I don't think of pretty good.
In that case, Jino, would you like to describe or introduce us to your thoughts on the secrets of Droon?
So when we first were pitching ideas for podcast episodes, I did not recognize Droon at all. I thought maybe I'd seen the covers around in a Scholastic magazine, like one of those magazines they send out to children.
I love Scholastic book fairs, just throwing that out there. My favorite time of year.
I started to read and I realized I recognized the illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a brain blast, a flashback, and I remember seeing these books on the same shelf as I saw the Del Toro Quest books in my elementary school classroom.
Wow.
And I must have read them because I remember the visuals, but I don't remember a single word written in these books. So I must have been young enough to where I technically put my eyes on them, but not young enough to absorb any of the information.
Is it possible that you just flipped through the books and looked at all the pictures?
That is also true. It's interesting to me that these books were placed in the same reading category as Del Toro Quest.
What do you mean? They're clearly equal levels of reading knowledge.
I know I may sound cynical here, but I do want to make a point very clear. These are good books. They are just not my good books. On this show, we make a big deal about reading books that we consumed as children, and we react to it as adults, and we talk about our nostalgic feelings to it. But I have discovered this is the level. This is the bare minimum level of children's media that I can stomach before it gets so, I don't want to use the word juvenile because that kind of downplays the quality of these books. Because again, these are good books. They are just good for the reading level that they are designed for.
Yeah.
The prose is very straightforward.
The prose is very straightforward. I talked with Michael about this. We try not to talk about the things we read or watch before the episode, so we save it for the podcast, but I couldn't help it. Because there are many instances in these books where the characters will say, "We have to get to the castle to stop the evil Lord Spar." And the very next sentence will say, "They traveled for miles and miles and miles." And then the third sentence, "We've arrived at the castle." There's no sort of indentation. There's no paragraph. There's no spacing.
Not even a chapter break.
There's no chapter break. They just travel for miles and miles and miles. It's always miles. They're children.
They really
As
go...
opposed to Droons.
As opposed to Droons.
They really go far places in this book within a very short amount of time.
So these are books designed for a much younger audience than I am. And so thus I don't want to judge them unfairly, but they were difficult for me to read. And that's saying something because, again, they are supposed to be very easy for me to read.
Yeah, definitely, I would say meant for younger ears to listen to, but a very redeeming quality, like when you're, when you are like an adult going back and reading these, and you are specifically for the intention of discussing them on a podcast, plowing through them like all in a row, it can be like, okay, Eric goes here, Neil does this, Julie says this, Kia says this, Galen's here, All right, next, oh, there are nins, there are always nins coming at them at some point. Oh, an action scene, okay, oh, what's this, a new fantasy creature, and we're walking for miles. And so when you're like speed reading, it's just like boom, 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 plot point, here we go, which is fine, but a wonderful redeeming quality of them. And I would say if you had kids you were reading them to, perhaps, is just how creative these worlds are. Like we mentioned earlier,
there's so many unique creature names in this series. I don't know. I think I wouldn't have been, if I was Tony Abbott, I would have trouble coming up with so many unique creature names and character names and all that stuff.
Tony really throws them out there, too.
Yeah.
In one page of this large textbook, you can get probably a dozen funny names for things and places and items they need to collect and bad guys and funny spells.
In the first book, we see these big, puffy, red-faced goblin creatures called Nins.
I don't like them.
And they ride these reptilian dragon bird things called
Groggles?
Groggles, yeah. They are under the control of the nefarious Lord Spar, a human-ish looking entity, but he's got these kind of like webbed, vaguely aquatic ears that turn purple and black in different colors.
Is he wearing a leather jacket? It looks like he's wearing a leather jacket.
It definitely looks like like an SS style. I saw him and I was like, "Ooh, that is one fashy looking dude right there."
He's also driving a car.
Yeah, and isn't it like,
which stands out in this magical fantasy realm.
doesn't it bounce? I think it's like a bouncing yellow car that spews blue smoke. I'm pretty sure in the first book, it's like his first appearance. Because everything happens so fast, our characters, Eric, Neil, and Julie, go down through the stairs into the world of Droon. Immediately, they are beset on by Nins and Groggles. Eric, who's kind of our protagonist in a way, the person we mentioned who looks like Harry Potter, runs into Kia, the princess of, I don't know, the good guy city, Jaffa. Oh, you, human from the above world, which I know about. You don't know about Droon, and it's best it stay that way. It's best that most people don't know about Droon. You're here, and that's fine. I need your help saving my wizard mentor, Galen. And then we're just off to the races. And it just keeps on going. Our characters meet the kindly wizard Galen.
I think it's Galen.
Galen.
What a wizardly name.
Yeah.
It just feels wizardly.
And then there is Max the spider troll, who is like Galen's assistant. They go, oh gosh, so many things happen in these books. It's just, I think Kia...
I know, it's hard to summarize.
Yeah, Kia gets captured by the nefarious Lord Spar, who wants her because he believes she possesses the key to accessing this artifact that Spar created a long time ago called...
The Red Eye of Dawn.
Yes, the
One
Red
of
Eye of
three
Dawn.
MacGuffins. The other two we don't really see in these three books, I believe.
Yeah. There's a
Um,
lot of plants for future payoffs.
Yeah. Basically, Spar once created something called the 3 legendary powers. There's 3 artifacts. We see the Red Eye of Dawn in this book, which Lord Spar believes that Princess Kia's mother, who Kia believes passed away, gifted to her for her protection. And something important to note is that Galen cast a spell on these artifacts to disguise them. So they no longer look like, upon first glance, they don't look like the objects that they are until Spar breaks the spell on it, basically. So there's the Red Eye of Dawn, then there's the Golden Wasp and the Coiled Viper.
We don't get those, other two.
Not in these first 3 books. They come later on. These books are very episodic. They're very similar to kind of like cartoon shows that we see nowadays where each episode is its own self-contained adventure. But there are plants, like Michael said, that lead to the overarching plot.
I don't know if there is any kind of cartoon iteration of these books in existence, but if each of these books was crammed into like a 30-minute episode block, which I think you could do.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You definitely could.
Yeah, I mean, they would make for really entertaining TV just because of all the strange visuals and locations you go to. Because let's see, at the end of the first book, they save Kia from Spar's clutches. He gets the Red Eye of Dawn, and they escape on that magic carpet, which is great. It's also described that the sky in Droon is like pink, like kind of pink and blue, just like the cover of the book.
Yeah.
Just very pretty.
Except in Spar's lair. Once you enter Spar's lair, it becomes dark and
stormy. Volcanic, like in the second book, where they go to a desert for a hot minute and meet these sentient, fluffy purple pillows. I forget their names.
Here's the thing. I only remember the purple pillows from the second book. So I must have at least read it, but I don't, nothing that happens in this book was familiar, except for the purple pillows.
I also recognize these purple pillows.
Same.
I mean, they're very distinctive. Pillows with, puffy cheeks, and they're purple, and they look like grapes.
I don't like them.
They got personality, though.
Yeah.
They only ever really described the king of the purple pillows. What are they called? Like flumphies or...
Blumfies? Blumbos?
Blurfums.
They're called
Bartholomew.
lumpies.
Lumpies. Much
And
more straightforward than we were going.
The king of the lumpies is Khan.
Oh, yeah. A very interesting name for a sentient purple pillow.
Yeah. Desert-dwelling, village-living, king-having pillow people.
Yeah. He's specifically called the king of the lumpies of Lumpland.
Entertaining.
Yes.
I gotta say, for how quickly these books move in terms of like, okay, now we're at this location, now we're at this location, now this is happening. I was surprised how in the second book, when our characters meet up again in the land of Droon, they're basically, their mission isn't something unrelated and kind of like, all right, it's a new episode of just some other thing or whatever. It's like, no, remember how in last book Spar got the red eye of dawn? We're getting it back.
Yeah.
You cannot have it.
They're really good at calling back to previous books, which is funny when you read them like one after the other and you're like, I know what this is. I just read it. But then in the book, it'll be like, the last time we were in Droon, Lord Spar stole the red eye of dawn and we have to go get it.
Yeah, I gotta say, there was a long break between me reading the second and the third book. So that was really helpful in the third book when it was like chapter 1 and the author just goes, by the way, this is Eric, Neil, and
Julie.
Wow. And they went to Droon, and remember Kia the princess, and Galen the wizard, and Spar stole the red eye of dawn. Okay, you're all caught up. Let's get going.
Yeah. Like, there's a long period in which these books were coming out, because there's 30 of them, and the last one came out in 2010. So there was probably a significant, at least couple months gap between books coming out.
That's like 3 per year, approximately.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Well, we've talked about in the past, like with the Del Toro Quest series, the idea that an author writes a bunch of these or gets like a nice backlog going.
Yeah.
And then the publisher slowly sort of dishes them out here and there. Given how much the planting there is in these books and, oh, there goes Demeter, the sea queen, off to the land in which she became that which she became. But that's a story for later.
Yeah.
It makes you think, like, how much of this did Tony Abbott have, like, planned and, like, written out? Or did he just have a bunch of world building and he was writing these out on the fly? Like, okay, I know all the details. I know what happens. I just have to write the books.
I think he must have had to have planned it. Obviously, I haven't reread the next like 26 books, 27 books. But I've been reading up on things that happen later on in the series, and they do get deeper with the characters. I think I found with the first 3 books, there's a lot of focus on Kia's backstory, and then even Eric doesn't really have that much of a personality.
The children all kind of blend together.
Yeah.
We get a hint of some sort of character differentiation in the third book.
Yeah.
We begin to see them become their own people. But in the first 2 books, they're kind of just 3 amorphous children who sprint after the magical characters.
Yeah,
and
they're
help.
just 3 children from the upper world who are there for the ride. Eric is just, he's noticeable because he's the main character. And then there's Neil, who even in the first 2 books doesn't get much of a personality. And then finally in the third book, they're like, Neil likes to eat food. There.
He also becomes a bug.
He also
and that
becomes a bug.
keeps coming back in later
Yeah.
books, I've learned. Is his bugness. his bug affinity.
That's my next feat I'm choosing for my D&D character.
Bug affinity.
And then Julie, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep forgetting her name. Julie has a thing with the magic carpets or the flying carpets. I remember that. These flying carpets have like a little tag on them that's saying they're made by some special magic carpet weaver or whatever. And Kia describes to Julie how it's like, oh, not everyone has like basically magic carpet affinity. And you're pretty good with it. The carpet seems to like you. So that's
Yeah.
kind of Julie's thing, I guess.
A sneak preview of where the characters go, at least for Eric and Julie. So later on, Eric becomes a wizard.
Oh, wow.
He gets to be a wizard. Yeah, which, again, Harry Potter. And then Julie, she gains flight and shape-shifting powers from a wing wolf.
Whoa,
Yeah.
a wing wolf.
Yeah.
Does Neil ever move past eat and bug?
I'm not sure. I'm going to have to look into that.
He
Poor
is very
Neil.
comedic relief.
Yeah. Neil's watching his friends get these amazing abilities, and he's like, I'm hungry.
Oh, wait. Okay. See, I remember this. Neil becomes a genie.
What?
Whoa, that's a sharp increase from bug.
I just want to read from the wiki because this
Yeah.
line is really funny. Neil's main personality factors are humor and hunger.
Yup.
Are those also the main personality factors of Marvel Comics character Venom?
Yes. He's like Michelangelo, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he gets turned into a giant bug twice, one in the book that we read, book 3, and then another time in book 4. He also, at times, becomes a baby turtle.
Huh.
It's interesting that Julie is the one who gets the shape-shifting powers when Neil is the one who just gets forcibly turned into things. He becomes a goblin, And then now he's just like a genie. And then it says, while not exactly transformed, Neil also disappears before reappearing in a miniature glass ball. So it's like he's a human, but when he's doing his genie powers, he'll transform into a genie.
Wow.
It's very interesting.
I wonder what the power crawl is like in this series. Because so far it's actually been kind of interesting, kind of decent.
I imagine for the other two characters, it's pretty steady, and then Neil's is
Apparently,
chaotic.
Neil's the last of the three to get powers, which kind of is a bummer. Because when you see your best friend get to be a wizard and then your other best friend get to be a shapeshifter and fly, and also apparently she gets to see into the past.
Oh my...
Yeah.
What the...
And then Neil is just here being turned into like a turtle and a goblin and bugs.
He can stick his fingers on his forehead
Yeah.
and be like, this means hello.
Yeah.
Mimicking antennae.
But he becomes a genie in book 27.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is very close to the end.
So book 25, Julie and Eric are like, guys, let's go back to Drew. And Neil's like, yeah. I mean, I got some homework to do. You guys can go ahead. I know you guys have a lot of fun there, but
No, Neil, we need your bug affinity.
I mean, I was like, I don't know. I was a chair last week. Like, I don't know. You guys go ahead. I'll clean the basement again. Yeah. Have fun, guys.
Yeah.
Say hi to
Poor
Kia.
Neil.
Poor Neil. But I do like how they slowly sort of see the characters gaining a greater understanding of how things work and an affinity for the magic. Let's see, we get in book 2, when our characters go to steal back the Red Eye of Dawn from Spar, we meet a character, a kind of, well, she's described as a witch initially, the character of Demether.
Who's very interesting.
Yeah, we see her initially as a mermaid-esque, but certainly looking more like traditional, scary siren, scaly mermaid.
Yeah, but her tail is actually like a snake's tail. Yeah, so she's kind of like, from the top up, she looks like a typical siren mermaid, a little evil looking. Her hair is kind of like almost like seaweed-esque. But her tail, like as the scales continue, it just turns into a snake. So her whole thing is snakes, and like she sends snakes after Eric or whatever.
She's kind of an anti-hero a little bit. She doesn't like Spar, but
she's been forced to help him.
Yeah.
But the main characters don't take any action to aid her in her escape.
Yeah, well, they have to hide. That's right. Because Spar, what happens is a group of Nins come walking in. We're in Spar's like volcano fortress is where they are. And they encounter this chamber where there's this pool of water. And that's where Demether emerges and sort of explains, you're in trouble because you're in Spar's domain. I'm cursed by Spar to do his bidding. And then reveals that Kia, who thought her mother was like dead or something, has also been cursed by Spar. And no one knows where she is. I think we have some idea.
Some idea.
There's a very helpful falcon in book 1 is all I will say.
That keeps showing up.
Man, I wonder who that is.
Yeah. Our characters hide as a group of Nins come walking into Demether's lair, and there's this ferocious-looking, strange giant lizard that's walking along with them. And Demether works, I think, some trick of magic, and the lizard turns into Spar. And we get some kind of plant for I don't even know what. Could be maybe a curse that Spar has on himself. Maybe he needs someone to free him from this form now and again. It's like some kind of werewolf lycanthropy thing.
I kind of read it as that's his true form. But in it, he's less, I don't know, intelligent, perhaps? Because he's a big lizard.
I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember the whole lizard thing, so I'm very unhelpful in this case. He technically is human, but because of his training to become a dark wizard, it's kind of warped him. And I think in the second book, they kind of like speculate that maybe it's the red eye because it burned him or something. So it maybe like turned him into that form or like placed a curse on him. It's kind of like, it's vague. And I don't know that they explain it later on.
Gotcha. You know what it is? When he's in big lizard form, he can't fit in his car. So
would track.
He's got to get a little smaller.
Demether is actually Kia's aunt.
Oh.
Yeah. She used to train alongside Kia's mother to become a wizard, but she kind of like turned away from that and kind of went on her own path. She does steal the red eye at the end of book 3. And then according to my research, she just disappears until book 12.
Oh.
And so I guess the red eye just goes with her and she's like doing whatever with it.
Sure.
But when she comes back, the eye has drained her power and she's like weakened by it. So it's very interesting. But then I think she kind of like helps Kia in her journey later on. And like, there's a whole thing that I remember this actually, where Kia and Eric have like dark versions of themselves that they have to fight. They're like alter egos in a way. Kia's dark side is called Nefu. On the wiki, it says she has blonde hair and a red tunic similar to Kia's royal blue, and she has a copy of Kia's crown. However, she is usually dressed in black boots and scarves, showing she is not exactly the same as Kia.
So it's an outfit swap.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. Doth Kia.
Doth Kia.
The only thing I can remember knowing about this series after getting that brain blast was, isn't there a book where they go to some sort of winter wonderland and the Nins hate the snow and so they use snowballs to like murder them or something?
That's really familiar. I think that does happen, yeah.
I remember reading that one.
I only remember something about basically having a snowball fight.
Or like magic snowballs. Something about these snowballs really hurts the Nins and they're able to drive them back with snowballs.
I think it's something about like they're fire and then so they don't react well to the ice and the snowball. I might just be like making things up.
Just listening to the both of you describe seeing the cover of these books or some of the images and being like, whoa, I remember somehow. And like me seeing the cover of at least the first book and then even the lumpies on the second one and being like, wait. And then there's that horse on the cover of the second book that's
it's
like
pilka.
a pilka. It's like
an alpaca, but it has 6 legs.
Yeah, and it's just
I like them.
I like him a lot, yeah.
It's like a weird Mandela effect with these books, except is all of it real? Because you describe pelting the Nins with these snowballs, and I'm like, I feel like, have I heard that? Do I know that? And my mom told me, oh yeah, The Secrets of Droon. I used to read these to your sister, and I don't remember that. But I'm like, what is there's enough Droon books, and there's enough in each Droon book that I feel like if anyone came to me and said, oh yeah, remember how in Droon, and then just spilled out some strange assembly of magical fantasy stuff, I feel like it could both be true and not, and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing about these books is it brings in so many fantasy tropes. This came out in 1999. Harry Potter had come out just like 2 years before, but like not enough Harry Potter had come out that you could be like, oh, it just stole from Harry Potter. But it's also like, it's got like magic carpets, which is like Aladdin. All the stuff with like Lord Spar is kind of like, okay, like Lord of the Rings a little bit. Galen is basically just like Dumbledore, Gandalf, or just like any other like old wise wizard in any fantasy book. So it kind of feels like anything could have happened in this series.
Yeah.
And it probably did.
That's where I know Galen from. He was a famous Greek philosopher and surgeon.
Oh.
I recognize the name. I know other pieces of media have used Galen as a name for an older mentor sort of character.
I mean, it would track. Demeter, it sounds like her name, who we learn in book 3, she's also, I guess, the queen of the seas. Her name, Demeter, seems like it's taken from Demeter, or Demeter, right? The ancient Greek goddess of
the harvest.
The harvest, that's the one.
There's a Wizard 101 character named Galen. Galen the Traitor. Unrelated.
Traitor or traitor?
Traitor. Yo, we should do a Wizard 101 episode.
I've never done a Wizard. I
can't afford to do a Wizard 101 episode. That game is so expensive.
Is it?
Ooh.
It's free to play, but if you want to play it, you got to pay it.
Ooh.
I
see.
You just saying Wizard 101, at first I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then my brain unlocked a vast chamber of advertisements on like Cartoon Network. Wizard 101. Come play the hit fantasy game where you and your friends... Oh my gosh, Jino, you've just unlocked something else.
I don't think I've ever heard or played this game.
You've just saved hundreds of dollars.
I guess good for me. Back to kind of the dark personas of the characters, there's also a very important dark persona, which is Eric's dark side. Whereas like Kia's is like separated from her, where she actively like talks to her and like fights her. Eric gets corrupted, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. Since he starts studying magic, he gets corrupted by some dark magic and he turns into Prince Ungast.
Ooh, that's a cool name.
Ungast.
Yeah. And it's kind of implied that Eric is still there, but he's like stuck inside. Prince Ungast like even hurts Kia which is like a big deal because Eric would never hurt Kia.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. They get married later.
What a
That's so-
surprise.
What a surprise, I know.
Well, that really does surprise me.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Well, one, in a Del Toro quest style narrative where all the characters are living in and from the fantasy world and there's like clear mortal consequences and terrifying entities whose threats are distinctly mortal and lethal. These Droon books are still pretty, I mean, sure, Spar threatens, I'm going to sink this island and you will all perish, but we know they're not going to perish. It's never in doubt that our characters will survive. But more than that, it's told to us in the first book in the series that nothing from the world of Droon should make it to the surface world, our world, and nothing from the surface world should stay within Droon, because for anything from our world that stays within the Droon world, something from Droon will appear magically in our world. And it may be something benign, or it could also be something damaging, like a Nin, or, I don't know, maybe Lord Spar himself. Spar seems to have ambitions to ascend to the overworld as well. I'm suddenly getting Gregor the Overlander
Yeah.
flashbacks. Oh, the links, the threads connect. All
There
of these
actually are-
children's books
Yeah,
are
there
connected.
are some Gregor the Overlander vibes because it's like Gregor, like Eric, goes down to another world and then meets a princess and then they fall in love eventually. I don't know. Apparently, they just get married way after the series. Like at the end of Special Edition 5,
Oh.
it says that Kia and
Oh.
Eric get married in the future.
That makes sense
Yeah.
to me.
So she becomes like Queen Kia and Prince Eric.
Huh.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
But I do wonder how that I mean, these books go enough places that for all I know, they fix that issue, whatever it is. Or
I think it's generally just implied, not necessarily in a romantic context, but that Kia and Eric kind of have a special connection. When Eric is trapped inside his Prince Ungas personality, like Kia tries to talk him out of it, and then Eric somehow manages to speak to her in a secret language that Galen taught them.
Huh.
So it's, I don't know, maybe just those little like plants here and there of like, there could be something here. But again, they are children. So in the future, yeah.
That is great. I do want to like double down on this, how good the planting and payoff is.
Yeah.
It's you know, again, there's not a lot of like nuance to these. There's a little bit in the sense that we see Kia's power start to bloom in book 3. Whereas in prior books, like in book 1, she's helpless before Lord Spar, essentially. In book 3, she's able to blast him with some magic, and she doesn't quite control it well. It kind of ricochets off and almost hits like Eric and Neil. She accidentally turns Neil into the bug in book 3.
Yeah.
But she's getting better, and so there is consistency there. But I know in particular in book 3, we encounter these little snake things called the sylphs.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and they're described as fiery looking. They turn red and silver, but they're not actually made of fire. And their voices sound like they're singing, but bubbling as if they're singing underwater, which is another excellent little creative detail that I think anyone can appreciate.
I do like, from like a sound designer's perspective, I think it's fun that Tony Abbott puts so many sound effects into the books.
Yeah.
Some of them make less sense than others, but they are certainly descriptive.
Yeah, I'll talk about the use of onomatopoeia. There's
Yeah.
a little $5 word for you in a sec. But for the planting and payoff, the sylphs come back at the end of book 3. They describe themselves as the sort of denizens of the ocean under Queen Demeter. And that's when Eric learns, oh, Demeter's not just a sea witch cursed by Spar. She is a queen of the sea, and the sylphs are her subjects in a way. And then at the end, Spar traps all our characters in a wall of fire and goes, I'll have to think, or how would Spar sound? I'll have to thank Queen Demeter for the idea. It's just my villain voice. I'll have to thank Queen Demeter for the idea. And that's when Eric realizes, oh, this isn't fire. This is just the sylphs. Demeter tricked Spar into thinking that this is a wall of fire, and he and the other characters are able to leap through unharmed. So good planting and payoff. For the onomatopoeia, Victoria, you are like so spot on. There are so many little descriptive sound effects in this book. You can just open up to like any page, basically, and you'll see something like which is just KEE-KKKK. Never 3 Ks in a row, it's always 4. And that's like a description of lightning. For water alone in book 3, since we're on the ocean, we get splish, splash, sploosh, which is the sound of 3 kids going into water. We get shloosh, which is the sound of water spilling over the magic stairs. We get splursh, which is the sound of waves impacting rocks. We get kersplash, which is the sound of water slapping against the sides of a ship. And a little more creatively, we get kawoosh, which is a magical sound of fiery water, whatever that is, rising into the air. We also get, I think the most creative onomatopoeia in book 3 is bembo swit, which is the sound of a ship's mast breaking and falling over.
Ooh.
Bembo swit.
I can see it. I can
Oh,
hear
yeah, because it like bends and then it's like...
Yeah, something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it plays 2 purposes. As one, if a parent is reading this to a child, it makes for a very exciting reading experience. I think these books work really well if heard out loud. I think in a sort of storytelling atmosphere. But also for reading comprehension, if you have all these weird words, nins and groggles, it forces the child to be like, I can't just memorize words. I have to sound out these new weird words and I have to explore what they mean visually and auditorially. I don't know. I'm not a teacher. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I think you're totally right. I mean, I had a weird experience in reading at least the first few books, because as I was reading, I was like, oh, I can just blast through this pretty fast. The prose is simple enough. But I found myself slowing down and reading it methodically as if I was reading it out loud to someone. And I don't know why that is. Just something in the way it's written, something in the way that maybe the characters speak. It feels like, it does, Jino, it does feel like the kind of book that would do very well being read aloud in a kind of story time fashion.
I think maybe it's partially because the writing is so straightforward. And actually, if you kind of read it in your head, you might read through it too quickly.
Yeah.
Like you might just kind of like skim over it and be like, okay, they like go down the stairs and then they go into the land and blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you're reading it out loud, you can get those individual beats and you can kind of pace out those moments a little better yourself. Kind of like how Jino said, like when they walk for miles and miles and miles, you can kind of slow it down to mimic the pacing of, and they walked for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah.
And then they arrived.
Yeah. A good storyteller could really bring this to life.
Yeah.
Really enhance the experience.
Yeah. Michael, going back to something you said, were you saying that it was surprising that Kia and Eric get married because Eric is from the upper world and Kia is from Droon?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so this is when we get into some deep lore, okay?
Oh, baby,
Okay,
are you
let's
ready?
go.
I had to do a lot of research on this because as I started reading up on Eric's character, I was like, wait, I definitely have read some of the later books where this is revealed because I remember this part of the story a lot better. So, the origins of Lord Spar. Lord Spar is actually from the upper world.
Oh.
Centuries ago, he lived in Europe as a small baby. In peace, it says.
A peaceful baby. Didn't hurt nobody.
Yeah. With his 2 brothers, Galen
Oh.
and Uric.
Who's Uric?
Uric is Eric's great-great-great-grandfather.
Ah, very
Whoa.
creative.
Yeah. Because, I mean, they say in, like, book 1 that Galen is very old, like centuries old. It's revealed later that Lord Spar is actually Galen's brother.
Huh.
Oh.
And then they have a 3rd brother who was, like, missing for a while, and then they find out that he's still kind of alive or something, I think, and then Eric gets to interact with him a little bit. So technically, like, Galen is Eric's, like, great-great-great-uncle. Yeah. And so is Lord Spar.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why Eric has the proficiency for wizard magic, is because his entire family basically are wizards.
Wow.
Yeah, you're a wizard, Eric. Basically, their mother was Queen Zara, who is described as being so powerful, beyond imagination, that like 1/10 of her power would be enough to just take over the world. So if Queen Zara decided one day that she was going to be evil, she could do it like, it'd be like her pinky finger.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And this was
So-
a human living in the above realm, just a standard, regular, magic,
Well,
super powerful queen.
No. I guess they're not really like humans, but they are like kind of humanoid enough to like be able to live in the upper world, our world, and like get by.
Huh.
Yeah,
Huh.
so I don't think they ever go into like where Queen Zara came from before. Maybe they mention it, but the main thing that's revealed that everyone finds out that's like, whoa, is that Eric is descended from all these powerful people and that there's the three brothers. Because it's like kind of crazy. Like you meet Galen and he's like a wise, powerful, good wizard. And then you see Lord Spar who... Here's where I get a little confused is because like Lord Spar looks so different. Like he has like this webbed ears and
I
stuff.
think I've seen a picture of baby Spar.
What?
Okay, see, later on in the series,
What?
Spar turns himself into a child.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Yes, I've
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
that. Because I remember a tiny little baby Spar, but he's still got like a grown man face with his like little ears or something.
It's like weird. He like either turns himself into a child or like splits himself into like his adult self and his child self. Anyways, the child self ends up helping the kids. They become allies. And it's kind of weird. They're like, oh, but you're technically Lord Spar, blah, blah. So what's revealed later on in the series is that there's actually like a worse evil than Lord Spar. Lord Spar is actually basically like the pawn.
Mm.
And so what happened is there's this evil emperor called Emperor Ko, and he's the real like big bad behind all this, but he spends like early on in the series, he's basically like in some kind of deep slumber, which is why he's not involved until later on. He kidnapped Queen Zara and Spar when he was a baby and whisked them off to Droon. Then he basically just locked up Zara and she just slowly was poisoned to death. And then Spar was raised by Emperor Ko to become the like dark wizard that he is.
Oh.
Yeah. So later on, when Spar learns that Emperor Ko is the one who killed his mother, he turns on Emperor Ko at that point. But then later on, I think Emperor Ko manages to like manipulate Spar into going back to his side. And then at the very end, there's this moon dragon, Gethwing, who is Lord Ko's like kind of right-hand man in a way. He turns on Lord Ko or Emperor Ko. I have a distinct memory of Lord Spar going into the upper world. The chapter is written to be slightly ambiguous at first as to, oh, there's just a man walking through the street. And then they reveal that his ears are winged like Lord Spar's. I don't know if I made that up or not, but it's still pretty cool.
Be cool fan fiction either way.
Yeah. I remember a lot of that. Just like random details about Lord Spar and then the brothers and all that stuff.
Wow, deep lore.
Yeah.
Deep lore. I gotta say, there is this phrase that gets repeated, even in just these first three books, when discussing the ways in which Eric, Neil, and Julie, when it's described how our surface world characters know when it's time to go back to Droon, it's always described as they get some kind of sign from Kia. By the third book, it's in the form of their soccer ball, the one that originally sort of revealed to them the world of Droon. It transforms into a globe of Droon, showing the whole world of it. Whenever they finish an adventure, there's always some kind of line from Kia along the lines of, you'll know when it's time to come back so long as the magic keeps working. And that line kind of keeps coming back. I don't know if you know Victoria. Victoria frowns and goes to the computer. If that concept of the magic working ever becomes in jeopardy at all. Because I don't know, it's some of the parallels with Gregor the Overlander and just coming off the heels, of course, of the How to Train Your Dragon books. This idea of getting access to something fantastical and then that fantastical thing changing to the effect that it comes to an end and our characters move on from it in some way. It makes me wonder, is there ever a time when the magic stops working? It doesn't necessarily mean Droon is locked away from them forever, but is there some fundamental change to the fantastical world of Droon in the way in which its magic functions?
I cannot answer currently.
Pleading the fifth,
Yeah.
are we?
That is an interesting concept, though. All I know is that there is a mention that at the end of the series, Eric no longer has magic. And from my brief perusal of the final book, it doesn't say that he loses his magic, or at least like not in my quick skimming of the plot. The special books are much longer. Like we said, the regular books are like 2 coasters wide. The special books, if I'm remembering correctly, are like almost like a Warrior Cats book.
Like a novel, yeah.
Yeah, like a novel. So a lot happens in them, which is why I can't possibly summarize all of it for this podcast. But I'm seeing something at the end of like after they defeat Gethwing and all their alter egos and stuff, they head towards something called the City of Gold. there's a mention of Eric saying that he reflects on how he might never see Droon again. So what I'm thinking is potentially like their pathway to Droon is cut off. Maybe they end up in a land that's neither the upper world nor is it Droon. So it's in a way it's like a loss on both ends, but I'm not sure.
I only bring it up because I'm trying to think of other examples, even just from the stuff that we've read. But I feel like you run into this a fair amount, whether it's Magic Treehouse, even to an extent Gregor. I think there's something very intentional and very effective in having a story in which you have children as the primary characters whose experience with the fantastic is relegated to a portion of their lives from which they always return home from. This idea of going to a magical land, having an adventure there that can be dangerous, but at the end of it, always without fail, returning back to a very mundane, safe home environment feels very much like the kind of thing that like a growing kid needs. They need to know they can go out and take risks and maybe experience something scary. And if they need to, they can always go back to the safety of a home, parent, guardian, whatever, as an important stage in their development. That's my understanding of how it works anyway.
Yeah.
And that seems like a common element, a common trope throughout a lot of children's media, as I understand it, of a certain age at least. Sometimes you just get stuff like Deltora Quest, where you're living in the fantastical world and you are living in the Shadow Lord's regime and everything is dangerous and watch out.
But it is something to be said. What's the term? Isekai? Is the term
Oh.
of someone from a regular world being pulled into a fantastical or a very different world, and they are out of their element and they have to learn and grow. In a lot of American children's media, this main character or these main characters return to the regular world. They have changed, they have grown, but the regular world has stayed the same, and they are no longer able to access this fantastical, magical realm where they've made lots of friends and enemies and changed and grown, but they can't go back. And I've seen a lot of debate online about this trope. Some people really like it because it's true in real life. You will go through life-changing experiences that are fantastic and wonderful and dangerous, and then they'll be over and you can't go back, and you need to accept that you have to move on, even though you yourself have changed. There are also people who say, well, if I put all this work into this world or this experience, I want to be able to benefit from that. I want to be able to go back from that. I don't want to be cut off from, say, a found family or from a great treasure or from an achievement I've accomplished. I don't want to never have that ever again. I don't want to have to move on to the next thing. So it is something important to teach children that, hey, like, you're going to go to this 3-month summer camp and you're going to have a great time, and then you're going to come home and be hit with a crippling depression you can't explain. But you got to understand that that's how life is. And then maybe in the future you'll get a job that lets you go, or you'll go to a college that doesn't work out, or you'll move someplace and realize it's not for you. And, you have to leave and you can't go back because, you're wanted by the state. And
Whoa.
what?
Jino has a history.
I don't. Legally.
Originally, I was thinking of like just the smaller, I guess, the microcosm of of young kids learning that they can go out into new environments and scary environments, and knowing that they can still come home at the end of the day, and there is that safety realm. But you bring up an interesting extrapolation of that, talking about isekai, which is this genre, very familiar to anyone who is even vaguely aware of anime, of a character, often like a teenager, not the age of the kids in Droon, but a teenager getting pulled into another world in which they have to adapt and grow. And there's an escapist idea to that. And sure, there's escapism to Droon, but it's one that the children choose. Sure, they stumble into it the first time, but they keep choosing it afterward, or so it seems. For something like isekai or like that, it's appealing to perhaps a teenaged mindset where you're like, geez, I'm going to school every day, and then I come home, and then I do homework, and then I barely sleep, and then I go back to school. I just want to be lifted out of here. And so you have a genre that appeals to the idea of getting pulled away from your drudgery, and even though it's a scary new environment, it's one in which, the possibilities for your life in the future are grander than something so mundane. And at the same time, there's also the additional thing you bring up, Jino, of the concept of that coming to a close, of experiencing something incredible and profound and having it then sealed away from you, and your life having to continue with it in your memory and your character, essentially, as you've undergone growth. But away from your physical experience in the world. That's ultimately like a more mature concept, slightly above, I think, the age of like the kids or a reader for these first few Droon books. And yet, from what Victoria has described to us about some of the progressions of these characters and their plot elements, and for how long these books have run, both in terms of just like the sheer number of books, somewhat 30, and the fact that they must have spanned like 10 years then in terms of publication. It makes me wonder if the Droon books have gone the way of other series like that, like the Harry Potter series, to an extent the Percy Jackson series a little bit, and matured potentially somewhat with their audience. Even if the prose stayed accessible, I do wonder if some of those ideas have changed, and what in the beginning started as, it's okay, you can go out to the scary world and you can still come back home at the end of the day, became, hey, I know this is a really cool and amazing experience and place that you have had, but we all grow up and we all grow older, and it's time to, set old things aside and move on to a different stage of your life, whatever that turns out to be.
You read 30 books and all the expansion novels, and now they're over. And you got to leave the library, kid. They're closing.
It's almost a very meta idea when you think of perhaps being an author like Tony Abbott and creating a full world like this for characters. And okay, I've onboarded them over the course of many books into this world. Now they're invested. How do I try and softly offboard them so that when it ends, it doesn't feel like a sudden disconnect where it's like, well, the characters are still there, but now the story's gone from me, and now I just have to go and do math homework. It's a very interesting, I'm probably reading way too much into this, but you bring up an interesting conceit in terms of narratives written for, I guess, youths at different stage of development. The power of youth.
Wow, we went to some deep places with The Secrets of Droon.
Victoria, you were the most experienced with Droon. How deep is... No, I'm not kidding. How deep is your Droon?
No, you can't say that.
Oh, that sounds a little weird. No, how deep is your experience with Droon? Because, I don't know, I've gone deeper than I have any right to, considering I only read the first 3 books. But how are you Drooning right now? How is your Droon?
Now I feel like I want to get back into Droon. Because, I'll be honest, rereading the first 3 books, I was, similar to Jino, where I was like, I know I liked these as a kid, but right now it's real hard to get through. It's just, really simple, and a lot of the tropes are kind of repeated. But knowing kind of what happens later on, I kind of want to find out how it all ends and how it comes together. Because, again, I feel like I just read, bits and pieces of the series here and there. I'm still continuing to read kind of the plot summary of the last book, and it's still unclear what happens at the end. Maybe it's just a bad summary and I just have to read the book. But a lot of the stuff that reveals Spar being the brother and Uruk and all that stuff happens in this book, so I'm guessing I must have read this book specifically. Do I remember it at all? No. Barely. I think I understand why this series had such a big impact on me as a kid, because it's just these 3 ordinary kids who find out there's a secret passageway under their basement. And I was definitely really into secret passageways as a kid also. And then it leads into this magical world and you get to be a wizard, and then you go home and you clean the basement. I was also obsessed with the idea that you could go on these adventures and no time has passed. Or basically very little time has passed, just like in Narnia, how the kids grow up and become adults and then they go back and have to be kids, which is a whole other thing. But I really like that concept as a kid. I mean, I always say this after every episode. I'm like, I'm going to go back and read the whole series. Who knows if I actually will. But in this case, I think there is a lot of just deep lore and really interesting just world building that I could see a lot of kids having fun imagining themselves in.
It's a great series for children.
Yeah.
I promised I'd talk about Max real
Oh,
quick.
yeah.
Now
yeah.
we're running out of time. Hey, Max is a spider troll. He's a human-sized spider troll. His head is a classic troll doll head. That little lumpy, kind of creepy-looking guy. And then he's just got a spider body. And he's big. And he just keeps following the children around. And there's a lot of illustrations of him, and I don't like him. and I'm going to paraphrase here, but I'm going to do my best to quote, he often wraps up the children in his ooey gooey sticky web. And I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yeah, I will say the first time you see like a picture of Max, his face, I think it would have been better if his face looked more like he was like a kid face.
He looks like an old man.
He does. He looks like an old man with a spider body.
I don't like him.
The funny thing is you told me that you didn't like Max before I had started rereading the books. And so I went in being like, I'm going to look out for all these horrible Max moments. I thought he was fine. I didn't mind him that much.
He's fine. He's just a troll spider, and I don't want a troll spider in my life.
He's not in your life. He's in Eric and Neil and Julie's life.
And I'm sorry for them.
He's helpful.
Yeah.
He tries to be.
I
is
thought he's
helpful.
fun. Because I perused through the book before I read it and looked at all the pictures, and I was like, oh no, there's a spider character. And usually spider characters in fantasy books are like scary and bad. But he's like Galen's assistant. He's fine. I don't have much to say about him, to be honest. He was just there.
I just don't like how big he is. He's huge.
Well, I think technically he's the smallest among them.
There's more?
No. Among the central characters.
Okay. There's a whole kingdom of
I mean,
Maxes.
there must be. He had to come from somewhere, right?
Who knows? Maybe he was created by
abomination.
Galen. Maybe he was cursed by Spar. Well, what do you got for us, Victoria? What's the Max lore?
Oh, there's literally just one paragraph about him. That's how unimportant he is.
No one likes Max.
Oh, there's a fun drawing of him steering a boat.
Gino's shaking his head. What does it look like? His facial proportions look a lot different in that picture.
Max, I'm actually okay with. Because that Max's proportions, I agree. He looks less like a lumpy old man who's trying to give out candy, and he looks more like an angry gnome who's been cursed with like a beetle body. And he looks like upset about it, and I'm okay with that. Because I'm upset about it, and if he's upset about it, we're all upset together.
Okay, wait. So here's the Max lore we get from the Droon wiki. He is a spider troll, an assistant to Galen Longbeard. Max is very protective of Princess Kia. He is Galen's eyes while Galen is gone. Max witnessed the overthrowing of Lubalunda, his home village, at the hands of Prince Ungast. Thanks, Eric. His only family member mentioned in the series was Fetus? Fetus?
Fetus?
Oh, no.
No, it's spelled Fedous. So it's like Fetus.
Fedows?
Fedos? His nephew. So that means he has enough family to at least have a sibling who had a child.
Huh.
Well,
yeah.
Glad we don't meet him.
It's very interesting. Oh, he disappears in book 27. Does he die?
Nice.
Gino's so quick on the draw.
I'm sorry. It's a children's book. He's a great character.
If he dies, that would be evidence for me that these books mature as they go. But I feel like they wouldn't do it.
Well, he disappears. So where does he go? I guess he could just usually it's a lot of the characters who like Demether, who disappears in book 3 and then comes back in book 12. If they didn't die, they'll come back for the final book, like the final battle.
Okay.
So I don't know. We'll see. I guess I'll have to report back on Max's story arc when
Victoria.
I read the series.
read all the Droon books.
If they had this at the bookstore and I could just sit down and read all 30 of them, I could bang that out in one day.
Probably.
In just like a couple hours.
Your brain might be mush from having to speed read all of it.
It's like 20 minutes per book, almost, maybe half an
Yeah,
hour.
it's basically. So it's like there's 30 books and each one takes about, it's 3 per hour. So it's like, that's 10 hours. That's a lot. Well, maybe on the next Droon episode we'll find out.
Wait, hold on. No. It's okay. Maybe that one you guys can get a special guest.
No, guys, I really think that we should read all 30 Droon books and do an episode on it. Because Jino loved the series so much.
I'll bring in my Max the Spider Troll fan fiction.
We could make a Max the Spider Troll plushie and gift it to Jino.
Why would you do that? I like the fan fiction idea better.
Here you go, Jino. Happy Arbor Day.
This is Max the Spider Troll, coffee shop AU.
Oh
He's
my
a
gosh.
barista.
Hey, he'd be a pretty good barista. He's got lots of legs.
That's true.
I'm just saying.
He also it seems like he has the temperament to manage that.
And if any customers are really mean to him, he can just wrap them up in his ooey gooey sticky web.
I hate it so much. Well,
Just don't make Max the barista mad, Jino, and you won't have to worry about it.
I'm just, this is too much. Anyway, thanks for listening to Nostalgia Club.
Until the next episode, stay Droon.
Stay Droon.
Hey, clean the basement. Hey, kids, move the heavy stuff in the basement. You done yet? Where'd they go?
What's this closet? Let me turn the light on. Oh, God! Down the stairs. Oh, my Droon! Ah.
Thank you for listening to Nostalgia Club. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on Twitter at _Nostalgia Club and on Instagram at Nostalgia Club Podcast. Leave a comment, give us a rating, and subscribe. You can also send us an email with your suggestions for what we should review next at nostalgiaclubpodcast@gmail.com.
Okay, it has been weeks since we've read Droon, and I'm just now calling Casey, and I had to remind myself of the characters' names. So I'm gonna call Casey here and try and summarize 3 books of packed Droon content in under a minute. What happened again?
Hello, Michael.
Hey, Casey. It's Michael. How's it going? Or you just said my name. You know it's me. How's it going?
I do know you. Not bad. I just sat down to eat some dinner.
To eat some dinner? Well, that sounds like no better time than to tell you the plot of 3 of the Secrets of Droon books in under a minute.
All right. I think it's a lot to cover, but I mean, if you can do it.
Oh, it's easy for me. I've got it all in the palm of my head. So here's how it starts. Julie, Neil, and Eric, that's his name, are 3 kids set to clean out the basement of Eric's house. But they turn off the lights in the closet, and a magical staircase descends through the floor into the magical land of Droon. There they find the Princess Kia under pursuit of the evil Lord Spar. Rescuing her from Spar's evil fortress, they are unable to prevent Spar from obtaining a magical artifact that's the red glove of... The bad glove that makes him shoot fire. They proceed to save Kia on a magic carpet. Wow, I've got 18 seconds left. And have 2 subsequent adventures in Droon where they retrieve the evil bad glove from Spar's lair while encountering a siren who is cursed by Spar. And then in another adventure, wind up on an island and get assisted by that very same siren to escape the island. And I think the siren takes the evil glove away. And that's about all I can muster.
Those 2 other books really didn't get much time.
Yeah, they honestly cover a lot in every book. But does it sound compelling?
No.
Well, I guess that's what happens when you try and do this weeks out in under a minute.
It sounds a little bit like Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe to me, with a couple other little gimmicks.
Yeah, in some ways it is similar, I suppose. In some ways. There's like 50 books of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it goes places.
So somebody's making some money.
One would presume at 50 books. So well known as it is. Well, I won't keep you from your dinner. See you in a couple days. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was kind of almost a flashback to the amulet summary there. Maybe we should stop doing these weeks after we... Thank you for listening to the Nostalgia Club. Bye.